There's a great national debate going on in Israel right now. The overwhelming push is the emotional push, not the intellectual push. And that's always dangerous. When you follow your emotions, but not your thoughts and your mind, it's going to feel much better, whatever you do. But you'll pay for it later, big, sometimes. That's the constant thing. It's when we fall in love, especially in our 20s, when our emotions are more focused sometimes than our minds. And some people make a wrong decision when they get married the first time. Not everybody. Sometimes the emotions are in sync with the mind, and sometimes it just so happens the emotions are right also. But when we act based on emotion without thinking it through, there's great risk. And that's indeed what happens. That's where parents get involved when if they have authority with their kids. They don't always have authority. But that's where parents get involved. And they say, I know you love him or her, and I know you, but it's not going to work for reason A or Y or Z. And it gets negotiated. On a national level, that's what's going on right now. Emotionally, everybody wants the hostages free, and they're willing to do anything. There actually have been demonstrations of 50,000, 100,000 people in Tel Aviv, Kaplan Square, with signs that say B'chol Machir or B'chol Mechir, at any price. And the word, the thing says B'chol Mechir, at any price, and everyone knows what they're talking about. We want the hostages free at any price. And there's hundreds of thousands in Israel who believe, and they want that. Any price, pay any price. Hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions. But remember, Israel's a country of 9 million people, 7 million Jews. 7 million Jews are not in Kaplan Square demonstrating that way. You don't pay any price. Any price? The end of the Jewish state? Agree that if you get back the hostages, we will cancel the Jewish state and the entire thing will be from the river to the sea at any price? You don't do it at any price. But at what price? And when? So they've negotiated, spoiler alert, they've negotiated like the worst deal imaginable, a horrible idea. And the deal reminds everybody of the Gilad Shalit deal. Gilad Shalit was taken hostage in a previous war. No fault of his own. He didn't just play around and walk into Gaza or Lebanon just to play around. He was in a tank and they got him, and they wouldn't give him back. And finally, Israel gave up 1,000 Arabs, 1,000 dirtbag prisoners, terrorists. Gave up 1,000 dirtbags for this one guy. And if I were his father or brother or a wife, if I were a woman and his wife, it's a shame I have to even say it that way nowadays. It would be obvious in a normal time. But if I were born a woman and his wife, I'd want anything, give up 1,000 people for my husband. So we all get that emotionally, but intellectually to give up 1,000 murderers for? So the nation cheered and they danced in the streets. One of those guys, when there's 1,000 people, you can't really recognize each one. One of them was a guy named Yahya Sinwar. He went and he formed and built up Hamas. And among those 1,000 were people who had murdered Jews before. I've never murdered anyone. I haven't even killed anyone. So it's like different if you've never shed blood with passion or at all. These were bloodthirsty cutthroats. And Israel let 1,000, b'chol mechir, at any price, just to get back Gilad Shalit. And of course, that prisoner exchange led to the killing and murder of thousands of Jews. 2,000 on October 7 a year ago, namely the 1,200 who were killed on October 7, plus another 800 soldiers who have died since. So that led to that 2,000, plus terrorism, plus intifada. They created a different group of them among those thousands, started the intifada. Thousands, at least 5,000 Jews died, have been murdered because to save one life. B'chol mechir, even if he were my brother, my son, my father, and if I'd been born a woman, my spouse, I can understand the relatives demanding it, and I allow for that. How could you tell a relative not to demand that? But the rest of the country's got to use some brains. So now they're going to, in order to bring home the first 33, and by the way, they're not all going to be alive. Many of them are going to be dead. It says in the deal, alive or dead. So in order to bring back 33 alive or dead bodies, but it will include, I believe, the 5 or 7 American citizens. That's the Trump part of it. It will include the Americans, all of whom are basically living in Israel, but they have, it's like if I made Aliyah again, that would be like an American living in Israel. And Putin is demanding a Russian. There's one Russian Jew, and Putin, because it's going to make Trump look good and the power of America, Putin just came out and says he wants one of those 33, better be a Russian. Well, we'll break loose on him. And in return for those 33, Israel's going to give up 1,000 murderers. And it's actually in the thing, it's going to be with people with their blood on their hands. And all kinds of stuff. And that's just phase 1. Then there's another phase, starts in 16 weeks. It's a in 16 days. It's a 42-day, there's also going to be a 42-day ceasefire. I don't care about that so much. I did a year ago, it's different context. Now, 42-day ceasefire is fine. And 16 days from now, or from Sunday or whatever, they're going to negotiate phase 2. When this thing is done, they could end up giving up something like 5,000, 10,000 of these Arab murders in order to get a total of maybe 60 or so. Even Hamas doesn't know how many are left. So we've been learning halakha of ethics and values, Jewish war, ethics and values. And we're hearing from the left that this is the Jewish thing to do. You have to do it. It may go against your grain, but we're Jews, and you have to do what's Jewish. And I always have an important problem with that, because the people who say that are typically not Orthodox Jews. You're supposed to keep Shabbat on Saturday. That's a Jewish thing to, supposed to be kosher. That's a Jewish thing to, supposed to keep Taharat Mishpacha and go to a mikveh. The Jewish thing to do is not to cut down trees. Jewish thing to do is no cash bail. The Jewish thing, you just follow Bernie Sanders and George Soros and Ben and Jerry for their own halakha and Mishneh Torah. The Jewish thing to do. So, for example, it is very much halakha, Torah law. We're going to go back to Rambam on these Thursday nights soon with the halakha. You're not allowed to destroy anything. That you have to take care of the environment. It's true. So, no logging is a Jewish thing to do. The Aron Bris Hashem, the Ark of the Covenant, is made with wood. The Beit HaMikdash was made with wood. Where did they get the wood? From Amazon? You had to cut wood. One example. You're supposed to lock up prisoners. You don't let them loose. In fact, people get killed. The Jewish thing to do, the halakha, is you kill them. You execute. These 1,000 who are going to be released, the Jewish thing to do, the halakha, is they have to be executed, which is what would have happened in a normal society that wasn't going around saying, what's the Jewish thing? Torah, halakha, someone comes and murders Jews deliberately. Well, it's what murder is, unlike killing. They're to be executed. That's a Jewish thing to do. So we're going to look at a whole bunch of sources now that the people who demonstrate on Kaplan and the political leaders on the opposition, the left-wing opposition, the Yair Lapids of Yesh Atid and the Benny Gantzes of National Union and the Yair Golans of the Meretz Party. Now they call themselves the Democrat Party. They don't know the Jewish thing to do. It's a liberal left-wing Jewish thing to invoke the Jewish thing to do by people who don't know the first thing about what is the Jewish thing to do. What they do is they start with a premise of woke, progressive, left-wing policies, and then they try to shoehorn it into a Judaism that they would not know if it hit them on the head. So I'm going to start off tonight with two little quick 1 minute, 2 minute examples of the Jewish thing to do when wokesters and progressives, rabbis and cantors who don't know the Jewish thing to do, take it upon themselves to let everybody know what's the Jewish thing to, and you'll see these two 1 minute, 2 minute clips, and your gut and your mind together will tell you, Shanda, how obviously this is not the Jewish thing to do. And then we're going to go into a lot of sources. It's going to be the end of my introduction, and we're just going to go sources and sources and sources. Some we learned 6 months ago. So in order to make this non-repetitive, we learned these halakhas with the Rambam and the Gemara 6 months ago. The laws of Pidyon Shvuyim at the time of the first hostage release. But it's been a while, but I don't want to just do a rerun. So I've put together a lot of halakha, and now we begin. Thank you very much, Rabbi Dov Fisher from Young Israel of Orange County. If you're here with us on YouTube, we're grateful to have you with us. Please give us a like, and if you like it. If you don't like it, also give us a like. Please feel free to send the link to other people so they can see it too. Don't just hold this experience for yourself. And please subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Examples, two quick examples of the falseness, the phoniness of people who don't know the first thing about Judaism. Rabbis, cantors.
We want to pay homage to the memory of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Rosh Hashanah service.
And we had actually, as fortuitous as it was, decided that our Haftarah was going to be one that we pre-recorded. And so in a moment, you're going to see the link to go find it online. And if you want to watch the traditional version of our Haftarah, you can, of course, go there rather than what we are about to do now. But what we are about to do is pay homage to a person that was a modern-day prophet. The goal of the Haftarah isn't just to add an extra section from Bible in. It is also, more than anything else, to acknowledge that there are people 2,000, 3,000 years ago who were speaking out for justice. And we are blessed to have prophets in our world today. Prophets like Martin Luther King, prophets like Gandhi, and yes, prophets like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I know many of you feel broken over her death, for what she stood for what she did. And so the best way that we can...
So far, this is not the problem. This is people expressing their political opinion. It doesn't really belong at Rosh Hashanah at the time of the Haftarah reading. It's arrogant to call her a Navi, Neviah, but once you realize he's comparing her to Mohandas Gandhi, and so that's not the issue. The best is yet to come.
Honor her memory is to use her words. And so, in a moment, we are going to chant the blessing before the Haftarah, page 247. And then I'll invite you to listen, as in the traditional melody of the Haftarah, we read a few key teachings, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's own words, as a way to bring out her memory and to pay homage to her. I hope you'll take these into your heart and use them for inspiration as each of you seek to make this world a better place.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנביאים טובים ורצה בדבריהם הנאמרים באמת ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת והצדק.
I tell our students, if you are going to be a lawyer and just practice your profession, you have a skill very much like a plumber. But if you want to be a true professional, you will do something outside yourself, something that makes life a little better for people less fortunate than you.
Real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you.
Okay, you get the idea. This is what we live in. This is the world we live in. And this is what it means. It's very important. That's why I'm doing this. Because people are going to stuff it and are stuffing it in our faces that we have to go forward with this with this exchange with Hamas Dirtbags, because it's the Jewish thing to do. This is what it is. This is what, when they're not talking about exchanges, this is the rest of their Jewish thing to do. One more.
Of justice.
It is a fundamental Jewish principle. Black Lives Matter.
As you know, Black Lives Matter supported October 7, and they cheered October 7. It was that famous social media post in which they identified themselves with the image of Arab murderers on those parachutes coming in to slaughter Jews. The Mishnah, chapter 4, Gittin. If a person, let's say, sells his servant, his Hebrew servant, his Eved Ivri, to a non-Jew or to a Jew outside the land of Israel, that Eved Ivri, that servant, automatically is free, is emancipated. You have emancipated him. You've lost your right of ownership of Hebrew servant in biblical Talmudic times by selling him to a non-Jew or, okay. And here's the key one for now. Ein podin et hashvuyim yoter al kadei demehen mipnei tikkun olam. And the paradox, the exact opposite of how the progressive woke have arrogated cultural appropriation, the term tikkun olam, to fix the world, to make the world a better place. We do not do Pidyon Shvuyim. We do not redeem ein podin, ein, no. We don't redeem Shvuyim, the captives, for more than the fair price. Kedei demehen. What does that mean? In biblical Talmudic times, people had a market value because there was slavery, and in Jewish sense there was servants. There were servants, Eved Ivri, let's say, and people had a price, but not more than a fair price. So what would a fair price be? We're going to keep learning. You could ask yourself, a fair price would be a person for person. If you want 33 Jews, you give up 33 Arabs. If none of them has murdered anyone, then the 33 Arabs you give up are people who haven't murdered anyone. Maybe not a perfect look. Look, if this one has blue eyes and this one has brown eyes, hazel eyes, so you might not have a perfect. This one weighs 157, and this one weighs 158. But the idea that you do person for person. Yoter al ein podin, yoter ad kedei demand. That's Mishnah. Okay? That's not the board of rabbis. That's not the Rosh Hashanah Haftorah. That's Mishnah. Rambam, Mishneh Torah. We learned this 6 months ago, but as you see, I've got a lot more here and I'm covering. But these are the foundational ones. The halakha gathered together in the 1100s by Rambam, that even 1,000 years later, in 2025, remains a significantly central core source and a source of Jewish law. Hilkhot matanot Aniyyim. These are the laws, gifts to the poor. Chapter 8. Perek Chet, Halacha Yud. We're going to do 10, 11, and 12. For time, the redemption of captives, Pidyon Shvuyim, that's a good term to know, to just learn the term. Pidyon Shvuyim. Podeh is to redeem. Shevi, in Hebrew, not the car, Shevi is captive. Pidyon, redeeming of, in plural, im, Shvuyim, captives. It's a concept, Pidyon Shvuyim. So we learn, yes, indeed, it's a Jewish concept that it's got primacy over virtually every other aspect of Judaism. The redemption of captives receives priority over giving charity, over giving them clothing. Captives come before your local poor people. Indeed, there's no greater mitzvah than the redemption of captives. And that's what we're hearing out of context. This is what we're hearing all day for the last 4 days. Ein lecha mitzvah gdola ke Pidyon Shvuyim. There is no greater mitzvah than Pidyon Shvuyim. Shavui harehu b'chlal hareivim batzmeim v'arumim v'omed b'sakanot nefashot. Because the captive, he's hungry, thirsty. You have to take care of the hungry and thirsty. And on top of that, you have to take care of the naked and provide them with clothing. And on top of that, you certainly have to take care of situations where someone's in mortal peril, sakanat nefesh. And this is all in one. So there's no greater mitzvah. If a person does not someone pays no attention to his redemption, he violates various mitzvahs. And we learned that, so I won't go over each one. At the time, 6 months ago, we actually went into each mitzvah. We looked it up and we talked about Hama'alim meinav mipidyonom. Harisa over all this mitzvah, that mitzvah, all of them. 11. Anshe ha'ir shegavu ma'ot levinyan bet hakneset. If a town, think of the old days, Jews living in ghettos or small communities, though only Jewish shtetls, like Anatevka in Fiddler on the Roof is a good image. So the Jews ran their town. I mean, they ran their town with the Russians on top of them. But in running their own community, they need a shul. They'd have a public campaign to raise a shul, like your own shul. Might have a building fund to build a shul, to improve the shul. In a community, a city, again, think of Anatevka, who raised money, a building fund to build a shul, Beit Knesset. Uvalahen devar mitzvah, motziin bo hamod. And suddenly, a mitzvah comes. They're allowed to use some of that money for that other mitzvah. Excuse me. So that's not considered, for example, embezzling and otherwise being dishonest. Like if you've raised 100 people have given money for the shul, and you've given and you've raised $100,000 so far for the shul, and there's a need for some associated mitzvah, like urgent charity, you may take some, because the thinking is that that's what the shul is all about. Does not mean that you could take from the building fund even to give money to Israel. But if there's some immediate need, practical, that's a community need in your community, like giving to the poor, etc., you could take out a few bucks and support that. On the other hand, kanu avanim mikorat lo yimkarum lidvar mitzvah. On the other hand, that's if you have cash in the bank. You have a building fund bank account. But if you're ready to use some of that cash to buy building stones, marble, any items that you would need for the building of the shul, the korot and walls. So any kind of building materials, windows that are going to go up, flooring, tiles. If you already bought stuff with money from the building fund, lo yim karum ledvar mitzvah, and then suddenly you got a poor person needs money. We just said, if you have money in the bank account for the building fund, you take out of the, you can divert it a little bit for that mitzvah. But if you already bought tiles and windows and roof tiles, you may not then sell them for a mitzvah. It's already been bought. One exception. Ella the Pidyon Shvuyim. Except for the mitzvah of redeeming the captives. Wow. So we see it really is an incredibly major mitzvah that is incumbent on the Jewish people. And again, everyone's throwing that around now. Even if they've already taken those building blocks, think of like the Kotel, how they actually built a wall from building blocks. Even if they've already professionally smoothed them and carved them so that they're ready for just being placed, and the walls likewise have been all carved and it's all ready to go. Vitkinu hakol lebinyan, and it's all ready to go into the building. Mochrin hakol lefidyon shvuyim bilvad. You sell all of that, if need be, to redeem captives. And only for that one mitzvah can you divert these assets. Avalim banu v'gamru lo yimkaru beit haknesset. However, if they already finished building it, you don't sell a shul to redeem the captives. Rather, you have a separate fundraising campaign to pay the ransom. Okay. Notice it's not talking about giving up other people for your people. It's talking about redeeming them with money. And nobody on my side of the aisle, on our side of the aisle, would have any issue if they want to start raising millions of dollars to redeem those Jewish souls being held by those dirtbags. But as far as giving over murderers, that's different. It's all about money, raising money to not giving up cutthroats. And here's the last halakha within Rambam for this. Ein Pidyon Shvuyim is critical, just like what we just learned in the Mishnah. Almost identical words. Ein Pidyon Shvuyim b'yeter al dameim. You do not redeem the captives for more than their fair market value. Mipnei tikkun olam. Again, this is tikkun olam, not the baloney that the left-wing Jews use to explain all their social justice, Black Lives Matter and Ruth Ginsburg. This is tikkun olam. Tikkun olam, to make the world a better place. The world a better place is not Ruth Ginsburg. It could be, that's your politics. Okay, but that's not what Rambam has in mind. Rambam does not have in mind no cash bail or no logging. That's not what Rambam has in mind. Tikkun olam means to preserve the natural proper order of the world without things going crazy. Literally, that's what tikkun olam is. It's got nothing to do with quote unquote social justice. It's that tikkun olam to fix the world, to prevent the world from going crazy. And that's not just my ranting now. It's mamish is literally what it is. Quasi-literally, the words mean fixing the world. Fixing the world, repairing the world before it breaks. So what's that about? We don't redeem the captives for more than they're worth, or it'll break the world. Because if you pay too much, you'll be motivating our enemies to go out of their way to kidnap Jews, to hold them hostage. By the way, that's exactly what we have done by previously not following the Rambam, by following left-wingers and progressives and wokesters, who tell us what's Jewish, rather than Mishnah, Gemara, Rambam, Yorah Deah. This is what ends up happening. It's exactly what he says. And he came up with it not on his own, but from the Gemara. The rabbis of the Gemara. If you'll start paying too much, lo yihiu oivim rodfin achreim lishpotam, so that enemies will not pursue people, Jews, to hold them captive, because you're making it into a business. And likewise, as we learned then, I don't want to focus on this, but let's learn now. And you don't go out of your way to try to free, liberate, help them escape, break into prisons and get them out. Because if you break into and you get 2 or 3 out, the enemies will become extra tough, extra hard on the ones that are still there. Does that mean Israel should not have gone in and freed? No, because they're saving their lives. And when you're dealing with Hamas, essentially, they didn't get any worse. We know that from others who came out. It was hell to begin with, and it remained hell. Shulchan Arukh. Now, Rambam codified Jewish law, gathered all the law found in the Mishnah and the Torah. That's why I call the Mishnah Torah. Gathered all the laws in the Bible, the Chumash, all the laws in the Mishnah and the Gemara, and he gathered it together and he codified it. You've learned a lot of Gemara with me over the last year, and it's a freewheeling kind of discussion process in the Gemara. It's not a rigid code. It's Rabbi this said this, and Rabbi that said that, and then Rabbi this asked the question of Rabbi that answered, and then followed up with his own question, and they disagreed, and the third rabbi. It's not a code of law. It's legislative history. It's watching how the law was being crafted and legislated. So Rambam took all of that, cut out the conversations, and just left in the law, like evaporated milk. Just left the milk, no water. He evaporated out the conversations of the Talmud, and he left just the law. And then, because the Talmud sometimes they get into tangents and they're not sticking rigidly with one topic at a time, he rearranged, after evaporating out the water and leaving behind only the milk. He rearranged all the laws to be topical, subject by subject. And that's the Mishneh Torah. And that's the 1100s. 400 years later came the Shulchan Arukh, which literally means Shulchan is a table. Arukh means prepared, the prepared table. What's a prepared table? Prepared table, you have plates, and you have flatware, and you have crystal, or you have regular glass stemware. You have maybe a napkin and all those things, a prepared set table. So the Shulchan Arukh is a table that set. Rav Yosef Karo set all the laws of Judaism for you, set it out for you to imagine a buffet. So I'll take some of the pepper steak, and I'll take some of the sweetened pungent beef, and I'll take some of the buffalo wings, all of it kosher, of course, and I'll take some of that salad, and I'll take some of those potatoes. So that's what he did. He put out all in front of you. It's all there. Enjoy. Now, it's broken down into 4 sections, one of which is Yorah Deah. There's Orach Chaim, which covers, let's call it everyday laws. Laws when you wake up in the morning, and laws about davening and brachas, and how to conduct yourself throughout the day, and the laws of the holidays, the Chagim and Shabbat. And then that's Orach Chaim. Then there's Even Ha'ezer, which is laws about male-female relations, marriage and divorce, and all the many laws that come up in the context of male-female relations, marriage and divorce particularly. And then there's Chosh and Mishpat, the laws of civil business, Civil law, if you actually find yourself suing in civil court, in a bet din, in a Jewish Torah court, they primarily reference that section, Choshen Mishpat. And then there's Yorah Deah. Yorah Deah is everything else. A lot of the esoterica, building a mikveh, slaughtering animals for kashrut, things that are not everyday like Orach Chaim, have nothing to do with the male-female relationship like Even Ezer, aren't about civil litigation, but laws that deal with the stuff that rabbis would deal with more than other people. But there also are many laws that everyone deals with in Yorah Deah, and that includes Pidyon Shvuyim. So here we are in Siman, the way they discuss in Shulchan Arukh, there's the Siman and the Seif. In Rambam, it's the Perek and the Halacha. In Chumash, it's the Perek and the Pasuk. And in Shulchan Arukh, it's the Siman and the Seif. So here we are in Siman 252, Reish Nun Bet, Seif Dal. Ein pod, straight out of Rambam, straight out of the Gemara. Ein podim hashvuyim yoter miktei dameim. We do not pay more for captives than their value. Miktei dameim. Damim, dam means blood. That's another story. But damim means money, means cash. Sometimes words sound the same but have different meanings. Sometimes they're even spelled the same and have different meanings. Homonyms in English. Homonyms. So just like we have homonyms in English, you have it in Hebrew. So damim is money. You don't pay more than the prop. Again, it's fascinating. It never occurred to me in all my, I'm over 70, 71, and Baruch Hashem, thank God. And it never occurred to me till tonight that they never really talk about, in redeeming captives, they never talk about redeeming captives with captives. They talk about redeeming them with money. All halachas about the mitzvah of redeeming captives is premised on paying for the captives. How much do you pay? It doesn't even talk about redeeming them with people. Interesting, much less murderers, dirtbags. So, mipnei tikkun olam. Again, you don't pay more than their value because of the world. Shelo yiyu ha'avemos rimat smam aleim l'shvotam. That it shouldn't be. You pay so much that people, your enemies, even risk their lives to take them captive because they're so valuable. Think of what happened in 1848 in the gold rush. Americans ran from all over the country to California. They heard that they found gold in Demdar Hills. And people said goodbye to their families, told their wives, I'll be back if I come back. California, here I come. And not where it started from. And coming back hoping for gold. And most never found it. Some did. And people, this happens all the time. Something comes out, there's a terrible thing going on in South Africa. Terrible thing going on right now in South Africa, where poverty-stricken people from other African countries, illegal immigrants, have immigrated illegally into South Africa, trying to go. They found out that South Africa has closed down. South Africa is famous for their gold mines, their diamond mines. South Africa has closed down many mines, understandably, by the time they've basically been stripped of all their resources. Like, it has just so much gold, it doesn't keep growing, it's not trees. Gold doesn't grow on trees either. But more gold doesn't grow in the cave, in the mine, more diamond. So at a certain point, South Africa closes the mine. Everybody does, not just South Africa. They do it in Kentucky also. And if you close the mine, if you're not going to be able to get stuff there anymore, they close that mine. Because, God forbid, between cave-ins and methane gas, they become truly deadly dangerous. So once a mine is closed, they close it off. So you've got these illegal immigrants from Africa, illegally immigrating into South Africa. They found out if they go to the closed and they break in to the closed down mines, which no sensible person would do, but they're desperate. And even when a mine is closed, obviously, there's little itsy bitsies of gold and diamonds still left. it's no longer financially worthwhile, no longer commercially sensible to employ coal miners, diamond miners, gold miners to keep at it. It doesn't pay anymore. But for someone who's about to die of starvation and has no source of income, the idea of going and scratching that maybe in a week you'll find a little nothing from nothing of gold, or that could be the biggest thing they'll get in their lives. So it's like a national story now that they go in and they're told not to go in because the mines are deadly. They go in anyway. Some come out with little bitsies, and most don't find anything, and the mines cave in on them. And there's like a big national story, international story. All the major papers have been reporting hundreds of dead people in the South African coal mines. There was like a cave in or something, and South Africa's trying to decide to get them out. And since they're not citizens of South Africa, there's a strong national consensus among the government. Heck with them, leave them buried in the cave-in. And so that's going on there. We'll leave for that our discussion of South Africa, a highly moral country that brought the criminal court justice, International Court of Justice, the ICJ case against Israel. The highly moral and ethical South Africa. It's going to leave them all there. Anyway, the idea is that, interesting, Pidyon Shvuyim is for money. And they don't really contemplate this. Just like those African illegals in South Africa are willing to give their lives. They're willing to put their lives in the line for a little nothing of gold or diamond that maybe they'll never, typically don't find. So people, if they hear the Jews pay like crazy amounts for hostages like no one in the world pays, they'll risk their lives for a Jew, to get a Jew. The halakha is the nation, the people, like the state of Israel. You're not allowed to pay more than the fair market value. And again, this doesn't even contemplate giving up murderers. It's talking about money. But the halakha permits you yourself, if you're J. Paul Getty, right, that movie, All the Money in the World. If you're J. Paul Getty and you have a relative that you want to redeem, it's no certainty that J. Paul Getty would give up his money to redeem a hostage of his family. But if you want to redeem your wife, your husband, your child, if you have the money, gesundheit, that's you. So they'll know in the future to take hostages of billionaires and millionaires, and indeed they do that. And indeed, billionaires and millionaires actually hire private security because they're delightful targets of captors who would take hostages. So, if he's a national Torah sage, like I'll mention, I don't want to even put an ayin hara on sages, but an obvious number one renowned sage, not just a rabbi like me. I hope you think I'm scholarly and a good rabbi, but I'm not on that level. But someone who's the number one, number two, number three, that the nation, because that's a symbol of the nation. O afilu eino Talmud Chacham, ella Talmid Chacham, el shehu Talmid Charif. Even someone who's not a number one, number two, or a Rav Moshe Feinstein, a Rav Ovadia Yosef, but someone who really is like, if not a Supreme Court justice, a federal appeals court justice, like judge, top of the line. Ve'efshar sheyeh adam gadol podimoto b'damim rubim, and maybe even a non-rabbinic Torah, non-rabbinic wealthy man who's like a major guy, like who would be a guy that would win, like a Jew that would win a Nobel Prize and would have Jewish values. So let's say the Prime Minister of Israel or a minister in the cabinet. For them also, you could pay more than the average. Teshuvot HaRadbaz. The Radbaz was a very, very Obviously, since he's on your screen, he was one of the great rabbis, Torah scholars of his generation. There was only one Rambam, and there's the Mishnah Gemara. That's it. And then in later years, there did emerge certain rabbinic authorities who were way, way, way authoritative beyond everyone else. A rabbi like me, if I don't know something, would consult a greater rabbi who then would consult the Radbaz. I would not have the temerity to go straight to the Radbaz. So the Radbaz and Chelik Aleph, Tshuva Mem, these are responsive. The way that Torah Judaism has maintained itself contemporary, even though they closed the Shulchan Arukh in the 1500s, 16th century, and nothing like it has come out since. Right after Rambam in the 1100s, 400 years later came the Shulchan Arukh. But since then, there has been nothing else. So how have we kept Orthodox Jewish law, that is to say Jewish law, there's no other Jewish law but Orthodox, how have we kept Jewish law contemporary, in touch with the latest things, electricity, artificial intelligence, all kinds of modern things, travel to the moon? The way we've done it is through Teshuvot, what we call shutim, shin vav, double quotation mark, tav, stands for she'elot, u, teshuvot, questions and answers, or in English, responsa. And these teshuvot, rabbis would receive questions, they would respond to them. The question is a she'elah, or in Yiddish, a shaila, and the answer would be a teshuvah, or tshuva. So shailas and tshuvas, she'elot u teshuvot, responsive. So here's a responsum, singular, plural responsa, singular responsum. Okay. So in this larger responsa, number 40 in section 1, so he's talking about the same concept. He says, we do not pay more. Let's see where we're going to start. Hare anu ro'im b'zman hazeh, we see nowadays shehashvayim ein yotzim l'chatchila b'shvil Yisrael ela l'chol mi sheyimtzeu. Nowadays, in his world, they weren't going only taking Jewish captives to hold ransom, but Goyim also. Nowadays, since we see that ransom takers, kidnappers, don't distinguish between Jews and Goyim, they kidnap whoever they can for ransom. What a society that must have been, where it's like a thing. Hilkhot afilu shepodin otam yoter mima sheshava b'shuk. Therefore, if you want to redeem a Jewish captive for more than the market value, notwithstanding what we've learned about Mishnah, Gemara, and Rambam, kevan she'ein podim otam yoter mima sheniftim she'or akum. Akum stands for avodat kochavim. That's a synonym for non-Jews. Akum. A synonym for non-Jews. Ovdei kochavim. So anyway, since Radbaz says, since we see that the price to redeem a kidnapped ransom, a kidnapped captive, is the same whether a Jew or a guy, so you pay whatever it is. And if it's an unusually high demand, you're allowed to pay it, even though we just learned you don't pay more than the market value. Because it's not aimed at Jews qua Jews, but you have the bad luck that you have an unusually demanding kidnapper and an unusually important captive. So since it's the same with whether you're asking for Jew or for Guy, okay, and let's face it, Yisrael, Jews are gomlei chesed. We're just, let's face it, we're nicer than other people. We're more charitable than other people. It just is. Even poor Jews give tzedakah and maser and truma, and the word tzedakah is like an English word in our community. Jews are charitable people. I mean, they have wonderful charitable Americans who give for causes when there's an earthquake overseas or there's, but do Americans, and when there's like a national thing, like when there's a famine in a particular country, like when I was in college, there was Biafra. Everybody raised money for Biafra, or these other kind of places where there's suddenly like an earthquake, and everybody gives money for Turkey for the earthquake. But Jews give money even when it's not public. People just give tzedakah. It's just an amazing thing. Of course, they give to California fire victims, but throughout the year, I don't just have people asking me during the year. I have people calling me and asking me, where's a good place to give money? Or I want to give money to Israel. Can you tell me a good charity? I already gave to the soldiers, and I'd like to give to the... And it's unbelievable. We are Gomle Chesed, B'nai Gomle. We are charitable, the children of charitable. It's in our DNA. Therefore, we pay more for a hostage than Goyim do. So Radbaz is saying it's just natural that Jews are going to pay more because forget about everything else. We're just more charitable. And even though it's certainly not charity to pay to a kidnapper, but we're not being charitable to the kidnapper, we're being charitable to the kidnapped. So Radbaz is saying you don't pay more than market value, Mishneh, Rambam, but as long as we're being asked above market value, not because we're Jews, but they do that, that's the price today, they're doing it to everybody, you could pay more. Of course, that does not apply to today's situation in Israel, where they dafka kidnap Jews, and they dafka kidnap Israelis. They're not kidnapping French or American. They're not kidnapping Americans. October 7 was not, if there's 7 American hostages or 10, they weren't going around looking at passports and identity papers, just get the Americans. They were kidnapping Israelis. As it happened, some were American, some were from Thailand, weren't even Jewish. Some were from England, other countries. But they were Jews, that's what it was. It doesn't apply to this. We're talking only Radbaz is talking only if it's random, Jew, non-Jew, but anyway. So, v'hachi ika lemeduk b'matnitin telo katani ein podnin Shvuyim yoter mechdei shivyon. We have to look carefully at the Mishnah that we began class with, which says you don't pay ransom for a hostage more than a proper value. Elioter meknei demeim, mashma demein shel Shvuyim haragil bechol Shvuyim. Radbaz says the Gemara, the Mishnah, the Rambam basically is saying you don't pay more than the ragil, more than a fair market value. Avol if doto tam yoter mechdei shiur Shvuyim shel shiur lashonot akum. But to pay more than the fair market value that would be asked to non-Jews, ein ru'ui, it's not appropriate if they're coming after Jews. Because we have to be afraid, we have to be concerned that if the word gets out to kidnappers, ransom takers, even non-political, non-dirtbags, well, they're dirtbags, but not Hamas dirtbags, if the word gets out that Jews pay more, then they're going to go after Jews, even if they wouldn't otherwise. They otherwise would go after everybody. So you can't pay more because otherwise they're going to start dafka going after Jews. The economy docha de tzibura. And it's also an extraordinary burden on the Jewish community. If you're going to start, let me just, I missed the line. Because they'll start, if the Jews are going to pay more than non-Jews pay, then the kidnappers are going to go out in the first instance specifically looking for Jews. They'll risk their lives to get Jews because Jews are so valuable. They're gold, they're diamond. And also, it's an unbearable burden on the community. In his context, Mishnah, Rambam, Radbaz, you're asking people to bankrupt themselves. If the money's too high and you start having a community fundraiser that we have to come up with millions and millions of dollars to get this guy out. You're bankrupting people, you're wiping them out. It's too much. You can't ask everybody to pay that kind of crazy price. And even more so because once the word gets out, Parsem gets publicized, that Yisrael, the Jews, redeem hostages, pay ransoms like nobody else in the world, even beyond what they can afford, even that ein lahem, they don't have mishalahem, their own klum, they don't have anything. Well, shavadaya alu harbe b'mechirehem. Obviously, once that word gets out, the price of Jews is going to go through the sky. And that's exactly what happened. We gave 1,000 for Gilad Shalit, and this time they want 30,000. And they want murderers. We continue. Ketubot, this is Gemara. Gemara, Ketubot, Daf Nun Bet Amud Aleph, folio 52a, Torah Rabbanan. The rabbis taught, Nishbeit, v'hayu mevakshim mimenu ad asara v'demeha, pam rishona poda. If a wife is taken hostage and they are demanding an insane price, the way they do the Jews, but would not do the non-Jews, pam achat, pam rishona, one single first time, poda, the husband is allowed to pay or get the community to pay up to 10 times her market value. It's his wife, one time. Mikan ve'elach, ratza poda, ratza eno poda. After the first time she gets kidnapped again, he doesn't have to redeem her anymore. That sounds harsh, but again, the context. If he and they don't say shouldn't, he can't. If he wants ratza, he can pay 10 times, 20 times, a million times. Ratza eno poda. There's no obligation, whether a wife and frankly, whether a husband. There's no obligation. So I should say wife, because Ketubot, they're talking about laws of wives in that particular context right there in that Mishnah. But same with anybody. If we learned it earlier. If you have the money, have a good time. But if you don't have the money, the community does not do it. And if they want to do a wife, a person's one time, 10 times. And afterwards you can't. Pidyon Shvuyim. This is Rav Herschel Schachter. Rav Herschel Schachter is among modern Orthodox rabbis like me, modern Orthodox community, the rabbis who are ordained by places like Yeshiva University. That is, we're not the Haredi community, which is a beautiful community too, but we're the modern Orthodox or centrist Orthodox. We don't use modern Orthodox anymore. We don't like what some of that is turned into, so we call ourselves centrist Orthodox. But we're the ones who were ordained at Yeshiva University. We're contemporary, the way I am. So our leading posek now is Rabbi Schachter, or he's one of the 2 or 3 main ones. It was until around 10, 20 years ago, Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Yosef Ber Soloveitchik, he passed away. Judaism does not stop. Rabbi Schachter was his number 1 disciple and Talmud and student, and he has now published many Sfarim, books of responsa himself and books about halakha, and so he is now the leading authority in the centrist community, or maybe one of 2 or 3. The leading authority among Sephardim has long been, until his passing, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. The leading authority among the Haredim till his passing was Rav Moshe Feinstein. And again, all these communities move on, and those who are disciples of those Torah scholars, Gedolim giants, become the new leaders. Anyway, Rav Schachter wrote in this sefer, his book, Be'ikvei HaTzon, he wrote an essay, The Boundaries of the State and Its Wars. And this is based on 1970, and I think it's the last one I'm doing. Maybe there's a Ramban also, but give you a sense of how the time is going a little bit over, so we'll start winding down. We'll do Rav Schachter, and If Ramban is real fast, I'll take a quick look at it. Otherwise, we'll skip the Ramban and we'll just do one last thing that'll be quick. So I think we'll be all done in, I want to say 5 to 6 minutes. At the end, and instead of reading in Hebrew for time, we'll just stick with English. At the end of the summer in 1970, Arab terrorists seized 2 planes filled with Jewish tourists returning from Israel to America and took them to Jordan and threatened to kill them all. And among the captives was the giant of the generation, one of the giants of the generation, haRav Yitzchak Hutner, of blessed memory, who was the Rosh Yeshiva, the rabbi of Yeshiva Chaim Berlin, who's one of the, like, right there with Rav Moshe Feinstein. And so the rich students, to collect several $1 million outside the U.S., hand over this fortune to the Arab terrorists on condition they release the rabbi. And according to what Teshuvot writes, we do not. In the case of a captive who possesses great wisdom, it is permissible to redeem them. Okay. And there were some rabbis who thought this law was applicable to Rabbi Hutner, haRav Yitzchak Hutner. As a great scholar, he was like one of the 2 or 3 of the generation, and he should therefore be redeemed for more than his worth. But haRav Yaakov Kamenetsky argued this law was not applicable at all in the case of Rav Hutner. Let's say there's Moetzes Gedolei Torah, that the Agudas Yisrael had a council of the 8 or 9 leading Torah giants of the generation. So Rav Moshe Feinstein was number 1, and on that council with Rav Hutner, Rav Kamenetsky. Now Rav Kamenetsky could have loved Rav Hutner very much, but said we should do it. This was because the laws regarding the redemption of captives are only applicable at a time of peace. But at a time of war, it is impossible to say we are obligated to stop fighting on condition that we redeem the prisoners with money. Is this exactly what's going on now? And Rav Schachter saying we don't do it, and boldface. Rather, one may not redeem, cannot, it's not permitted, cannot redeem captives in this situation, because then we would be helping our enemies in the middle of the war. Since this large monetary gift doesn't even contemplate giving up murderers to our enemies, would allow them to further strengthen their position in the war. So, end of story. Okay, the impact on the morale of the army could be significant. So you have both sides, because the soldiers want to know that the country's going to try to get them out. Once a soldier knows that the state will not do everything it can to free him, including a willingness to release murderers in exchange for, it'll diminish his motivation to fight. So you have both sides. But his bottom line halakhic ruling, you can't do it. I promised you 5 to 6 minutes. Let's see if I can pull this off. The Eshomrim Dekol Ramban. Dekol Hecha de Ika Chashasha de Misa de Mita Podinotan B'chol Mamon Shechol Nefdotan V'lo Mistaver. Ramban says, in cases of the enemy holding hostages, there's Yeshomrim. There might be a reason to think to call Hecha de Ika Chashasha de Mita, that in a situation where you really think there's a really good chance they're going to kill the hostage if you don't pay up, Podino tan b'chol mamon. There's an angle to say, perhaps in that case, you redeem the hostage no matter what the price. She'elchol lifdotan, any price that you can pay, because it's about to die. V'lo mistaver, but that doesn't make any sense. D'chol shevi kula itnu b'hei, because every such hostage could be on the verge of being killed. And also, when they take women, they're going to rape them. And the bottom line is that every hostage faces death, and women will be raped. But the greater, because of time, I'm not reading the whole thing, but it's everything I've taught you tonight. Because of the greater ramification, that once you start, it's only going to get worse. They'll take more, and they'll demand more, and it'll cost us more, and it'll lead to more people getting killed and more people getting raped. We're not allowed to do it. Finally, this is from, with everything you've learned, closing out for tonight. This is a news item, January 14, 2 days ago. 100 rabbis. This is not rabbis that sing Haftorah of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and do Black Lives Matter. These are Gedolei Yisrael. These are giants in the Torah community 100 rabbis oppose hostage deal. So while they're telling you in Kaplan and telling you, but it's the Jewish thing to do, and isn't Pidyon Shvuyim, redemption of captives, the most important mitzvah in all of Judaism, and don't you have to take from the building fund 100 rabbi, everything I've taught you tonight, so you know the sources, the actual halacha. And finally, 2 days ago, 100 rabbis oppose hostage deal. 100 rabbis recently published joint letter opposing the proposed hostage deal, saying it jeopardizes Israeli, but doesn't Torah law say you have to let them out? The rabbis reiterated what they wrote in a previous letter about half a year ago. The release of dangerous terrorists, let me just make it a little larger for you if I can quickly. I think that'll do it. Okay. The rabbis reiterate what they wrote in a previous letter a year ago. The release of dangerous terrorists, withdrawal from strategic areas, or a ceasefire before defeating the enemy, all these endanger the state's future and the safety of its citizens. They state their stance is based on the rulings of the late Rav Shaul Yisraeli, who determined there's no commandment that justifies risking the lives of the entire Jewish community. And here's their statement, and that's it. Ta'at Torah b'nosei Pidyon Shvuyim. Torah law, Torah understanding on the subject of redeeming the captives. Short. Mitzvah Pidyon Shvuyim hi megdolot mehagdolot v'achushavot b'Torah. The law of redeeming the captives is among the most important. V'chayavim lahatzi in all the Torah. V'chayavim lahatzilam v'lhashivam l'cheik mishpachotem. And you're obligated to save them and bring them back to the bosom of their families. However, the price is now being demanded by l'shichrur chatufim to free the current hostages. Misaknim et kol ezrachei hamdina, endanger every citizen in the country of Israel. Zakenim na'arim tafinashim, the elderly, children, babies, women, chagon, that is, in other words, shichur kol hamiflatzot hamisukanot, to free all the dangerous monsters. Mifletzot is a monster. Misukan, sakana is danger. To free all the dangerous monsters. See, the rabbis, they won't call them dirtbags. That's my job. Al menat sheyuchlu l'shakei mitzvah haChamas hamitmotet, which is only going to rehabilitate and revive the Hamas army that currently is collapsing. Nisigame ezorim astratagim, and to retreat from strategic zones. Hafsakara lechima lefneach na'at haChamas, to stop the battle and the fighting before Hamas totally is brought under. B'chol elu v'domehen einat tzibur yachol lamod. For all such, the public cannot survive that. Moreno Rabbeinu, HaGaon Rab Shaul Yisraeli, it's Moreno Rabbeinu, our master and teacher, HaGaon Rab Shimon, the Gaon, the giant of a generation, Rabbi Shaul Yisraeli, Talmidu HaGadol Umamshich Darko Shel Moran, haRav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Cook, the student and the giant who was like a number one disciple of the great rabbi of the generation, the first chief rabbi of Israel, Rav Avraham Yitzchak, haRav Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen Cook, K-O-O-K, Rav Cook, the first chief rabbi of Israel. Rav Shaul Yisraeli was his first, was made. Birer nosei chamurze la'omko, the kavash mitzvah lahatzil shvuyim. He made clear in his opinion that it is an extraordinarily urgent matter, as deep as can be, to free hostages, ach lo b'machir shel sikun klal Yisrael, but not at the price of endangering the Jewish people. So we finish up here. Anu me'achlim lemanhigenu Hashem yinachem yanchem be'etzatova. We wish for our political leaders that God should guide and direct them with good wisdom. Ketzad liftot et hashvuyim, how to get those hostages free, tol kedei avtachat hamshech kiyuma u'shloma shel medinat Yisrael, but in a way that guarantees the continued security and existence and peace of the state of Israel. Together with all the Jews, we pray that the hostages, God's hostages, will return soon, b'riim, healthy, ushleimim, and whole, complete, begufam uvinavsham, in their bodies and in their spirits, uva'u tzion barina, and they should return, come back to Zion with joy, v'simchat olam al rosham, with the happiness of all the world on their heads. B'berchat chazak v'nitchazek, v'yashem imanu v'imko Yisrael. We sign off with our blessing that all the nations should be strong and that God should be with us and all the Jews. Rabbinei Torah haaretz, those rabbis. I want to thank everybody for being here. Obviously, I put together a lot of material to really bring it home because today is Thursday night. At present, the deal goes into effect on Sunday. We're going to hear so much garbage from people that don't know what they're talking about for the next few days. And that's only phase one. Then we're going to hear more garbage. So you're now equipped. Not that you're going to be able to change world events or that I can change world events, but you will be equipped with knowledge. And when you run into people in shul, it's going to be what they're going to talk about at Kiddush. First, they're going to say, why did they hire herring this week? Why did they forget to buy the herring? That'll be the main fight that will split the congregation. For those that don't quit the shul because there's no herring, the other debate is going to be exactly this. And you are armed with knowledge, not with my political opinions, but with actually 2,000 years of published halakhic opinions and statements. Have a wonderful evening, Shabbat Shalom. And as the rabbi said in closing their letter, may God watch over those hostages, watch over the state of Israel, and make miracles. You're not allowed to rely on them, but you can ask for them. May there be a miracle. And amen. Bye-bye.